IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we discuss the story of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hello, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Birds taking flight, tigers leaping, sun-drenched forests, well, the wonders of nature are all around. But these wonders of nature are gone in a blink of an eye. You can capture these moments forever with a perfect photograph. If you are interested to learn how to take landscape and wildlife photography, then you have to head over to the Great Courses Plus and check out the numerous courses that they offer. The National Geographic Guide to Landscape and Wildlife Photography is one such course that we've liked. You too can explore this course and many such amazing courses on the Great Courses Plus. Listeners of the Musafir Stories can avail a month of free unlimited access to all the courses. The link is thegreatcoursesplus.com/Musafir. MUSAFIR. The link will be in the show notes section, guys. So head over and check out the Great Courses Plus. As for today's episode, we have wildlife enthusiasts Joy and Chandreyi take us on a safari into the heartlands of India.
So, with that introduction, we'd love to welcome Joy and Chandreyi from the blog Moonchasers.com. Joy, Chandreyi, welcome to the Musafir Stories.
Hi guys, welcome to the Musafir Stories.
Hi Saf, hi Faiza. So glad to be here and so glad to be sharing our stories with the Musafir Stories.
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be on your podcast. And it is a great pleasure to be talking to you. And let's just make this a conversation that we remember.
Yeah,
Definitely. Eagerly looking forward to this. And like I was telling you, Chandreyi, we had the good fortune of meeting in Bangalore, I guess a couple of years ago now. So really glad that we're actually bringing you onto the podcast now to listen to some of those stories that we probably just touched upon during our brief chat in Bangalore. Without much ado, the intro we gave about you was pretty short and sweet. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourselves and your story?
Yeah, and how did even the travel bug bite you guys? I mean, it's like so much traveling. So tell us about your travel journey as well.
Very honestly, we try to travel as much as possible with full-time jobs, but it's been a hell of a ride for the last few years that we have started the Moonchasers. So how it came into being was quite a pet project, a passion project you can call, which was started out of a whim. Out of a discussion that emerged between Joydeep and myself when we were traveling to Goa back in 2016, that we capture a lot of content, but we never do anything about it. It just goes into our hard drives and back into our systems. And what to do about it, because we tend to travel a lot together. And at that time itself, we had taken quite a few trips together.
So we had so many memories out there. I mean, those photos, like what we end up doing, we keep them.
Right.
We like mull over them or just reminisce those beautiful days at a vacation, and they're just there. So and sometimes there are so many stories in it, so many tales we can actually tell people, and when people hear it, people are like, wow, that was so great to hear and experience. And so Chandreyi came up with this, that why not actually put it out for people to experience.
So yeah, that's largely about Moonchasers, and we currently are present across all social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We also have a travel blog where we do different kinds of articles about places, cultures, design, philosophies, and food.
And mostly important, nice stories. Sometimes we just write about that nice little story you would like to hear.
Right. Yeah, it's wonderful, guys, the work that you guys are doing. And seriously, hats off to that thought, because that's so true. We all somehow take pictures and videos of our travel, but the way, I mean, you guys have put it out in a very beautiful way and sending out a message not only just about how beautiful a place is, but also about how responsibly we can travel and make travel much more better. So, yeah.
Now suspense thoda zyada ho gaya. I think it's time to jump into the meat, right? Tell us,
Yeah.
you've kind of given us a good backstory of how you started and the kind of things you like and try to cover on your trips. Why don't we spread the joy a little bit, no pun intended, by getting into where you're taking us to today?
Well, we would like to go back to our childhood and
Okay.
revisit a story that maybe all of us has loved, seen it again and again in movies. That's the story of Rudyard Kipling.
A story
Yes.
that has shaped our childhoods in many ways. It has told us stories about animals and how their relationships work and how we can learn from them. As you already know, as our listeners might already know, Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book was
Yeah.
based on the premises of the Central Highlands and the jungles of central India, which currently is divided into different states, but largely falls into the state of Madhya Pradesh. So today we will be taking you to Pench National Park.
Awesome.
Really excited to be going back to chaddi पहन के फूल खिला है.
Yes,
Right?
the land of Mowgli.
The land of
Mowgli,
Mowgli,
yeah.
exactly. Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about Pench National Park and even about Madhya Pradesh, right? The central part of India, literally the heart of India, right? In terms of the wildlife and the national parks that are there. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Pench has been straddled between two states now. Like the extent of Pench, which is 758 square kilometers, is straddled between Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra.
Madhya Pradesh, as like we mentioned, is a place which is so rich with natural resources and reserves and even minerals and forests that it easily stands out whenever anyone is planning to explore the wildlife of India, right? Madhya Pradesh is home to India's most number of national parks for tiger protection at the moment. It is the pioneer in the Save the Tiger movement. And most obviously, Madhya Pradesh tourism has been very proactive in promoting the protection that they provide these animals to survive in such environments amidst populations and growing cities around these jungles, right? Because these jungles have historically existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's only for the last few hundred years that the cities have started encroaching upon the space which was completely jungles and mountains at one point of time. So it's been a constant work of conflict and human rehabilitation in order to provide protection to animals. But obviously, Madhya Pradesh is also known for its heritage. A lot of historical artifacts and grounds and cultural spots like Khajuraho and Jabalpur, which is a great natural spot for the Bhiraghat River and things like that.
Yeah, so quite interestingly, Pench National Park is formed by three different parts of the forest, which are called the Indira Priyadarshini National Park, the Pench Mowgli Sanctuary, and the buffer zone.
It's
So
very interesting to note how Mowgli kind of has made his place in the whole narrative of wildlife in India. It's beautiful to see, and everyone who visits Pench most obviously is aware of the fact that the story is based on this jungle.
But
Yeah.
but I'll tell you an interesting fact there. Actually, Rudyard Kipling, while he was writing the Jungle Book, he was at Corbett, and that's where he penned down the story. But he took reference from an incident that happened in 1831 near Sioni, that is the village in Pench. That is part of it's a village in Pench actually.
Sione
And
is the district
yeah,
that now encompasses Pench and
Right.
the
yeah, where
surrounding
there
area.
was a folklore of a baby being abducted and nurtured amongst wolves, and this is happening in 1831. So that became the the inspiration for the
Inspiration,
Jungle
yeah.
Book today. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, and it's kind of become a part of
Everybody's
pop culture,
life.
right?
Yeah.
Especially for
Yeah.
kids growing up in the 80s, 90s when it came on to um, the TV, right? It used to be on TV, and even now, I guess
Yeah,
it's
even
made in
now.
Yeah.
movies and everything. So it's continued to be a part of the pop culture, and it's funny how it's like a full circle now, right? The park is actually also has an area that's named after Mowgli.
Yes.
So that's brilliant, and yeah, thanks. I guess thanks to Rudyard Kipling for kind of mixing that beautifully. I wouldn't really call it fiction, but it's almost like a mix of fiction and
Folklore and
folklore and
yeah.
everything, right? So that's brilliant. Yeah, like you said, it's in the heartland of India, Madhya Pradesh, and many other beautiful national parks. Not long ago, we covered episode on Bandhavgarh as well, which is
Yeah.
again a part of this
Madhya Pradesh.
beautiful belt of
Yeah.
national parks. Now, in terms of just getting to the national park, right? When do you suggest is a good time, guys? Just given the climatic conditions as well as I guess other things also keeping those into mind. When did you plan, and when is a good time to visit?
So, very interestingly, we chose a shoulder season to visit the national park, which was in February, because all these national parks in India, they are largely closed during the monsoons because it's quite heavy in all of these regions, and then all the rivers and the dams start overflowing. The animals have to find higher ground. So, in general, most of the national parks in India remain closed during the period of June to September. However, they open up back in October and remain open till May in the next year. So throughout the season, the best time to visit the places are obviously between November to March, when the winter is at its peak and the animals feel comfortable coming out. The nature and vegetation of the forest also is such that autumn, the trees start leaving their
Shedding their leaves.
shedding their leaves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And obviously, like, sighting becomes more easier. And again, after February and March, when the springtime passes and on the foliage again starts falling back, April May becomes a crazy time to spot tigers.
Right.
So,
True.
quite interestingly, the winters are also the seasons when the animals mate. So, they are more active.
Active.
They are more
Active, yeah, yeah.
flaunting. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you get those beautiful dances of the birds. You get the animals like cooing each
I
other.
think I think it
That's
will be nice
yeah.
to call it a little erratic behavior also, because at that time they don't really care if there's a tourist jeep around because they are pursuing a meet. So that's
Right.
quite
Yeah.
interesting, and a lot of good sightings happen around that time.
Having said
Okay.
that, it's also something that we should like we would try to stay away and give them their privacy, and something that
Right.
True,
we
true.
should
Yeah.
yeah, kind of care.
Yeah.
But then there is
Definitely.
there's always a dichotomy or a dilemma between what you should do and not do, right? So, well, to be on the fair side, the jungle takes
Yeah.
on its own. It does
Yeah.
not get too affected by tourists, because tourism is quite controlled and regulated in all of these national parks, like you already know. So in that case, I think they get their privacy also, because tourism is allowed only in the 20% area of the core zone. The rest of the
Okay.
80% remains for the animals. So
Oh, that's
I,
good.
I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, true, true. And how about getting there? How does one plan their trip to get to Pench?
So the closest airport or the railway station is Nagpur, which is approximately 70 to 75 kilometers away from either gates of the forest. So it's wise to mention here that the forest has four gates that you predominantly enter from, and one being the buffer zone. So
Right.
Turiya is at the southernmost edge of the national park, and that's the closest from Nagpur. It's 2.5 hours drive away, depending on traffic and the road conditions.
Okay.
And the northernmost gates are Jamtara, and one to the east being Karmajiri. And these are the other gates which are a little more farther off than Turiya. But
Okay.
Turiya is the most tourist friendly because it has a lot of hotels and resorts along it.
Right.
And
Yeah. Huh.
yeah, and so that's the closest from Nagpur. So
Okay, yeah. So I was just about to ask you, even with respect to accommodation and stay, what best options would you suggest? So staying within the reserve area.
Correct. I
Okay.
think, Faiza, it will be wise to catch up on that a bit later in our conversation because,
Okay.
like Joydeep mentioned, Nagpur is the closest city to Pench. However, if someone is coming just to explore or indulge in the wildlife of Central India, there is a nice route that they can take, which starts from Jabalpur because
Okay.
Jabalpur is the closest to Bandhavgarh and Panna. And when you have covered those forests, you most obviously and naturally come down to Kanha. And what is most interesting in in between these forests, Kanha and Pench, is they are connected. You can think of them as two sisters because they
Okay.
are connected and they provide a very, very important animal corridor which passes through a highway. So there are some really interesting developments that has happened in that respect, which is also changing the way tourism is developing in the area.
And conservation is taking place because that Pench Kanha corridor, the highway that is being built, is a one of a kind because it's for the first time in India taken care of the fact that animals need to have their buffer zones, they need to have their corridors to cross across between national parks.
So this highway connects Nagpur to Jabalpur and is a
Huh.
four-lane, very well-made highway, and it is an
Okay.
elevated highway because animals are passing through under it. So now we can get to Faiza's question about where to stay when you are in Pench. So like Joydeep mentioned, Pench has a couple of very popular gates. Turya being one, and the most obvious reason is the most number of hotels and resorts are around this gate because it's right on the highway.
Okay.
And it gives you an opportunity to enter the buffer zone as well as the core zone. The most number of jeeps are also available from this gate, interestingly.
Okay.
So obviously,
Okay.
since the number of cars that can enter the national park at any point of time or the safari timings is limited and regulated,
Right.
Turia currently has more than 20 jeeps that go on for both the safaris in the morning and evening, while the other gates, that is Karmajiri and Jamtara, they have only like 5 or 6 jeeps which goes depending on the number of tourists that are available to take those jeeps. So
Okay.
that makes Korea an obvious choice. And but interestingly, I think Joydeep would love to cover this because we made a choice specifically for our travel to Pench, which resulted in some great results in terms of wildlife sighting for us. So
Oh
Joydeep,
wow.
over to
Huh.
you.
Yeah, so we tried to avoid the more touristy edge and
Okay.
enter the park through the other gates and explore its rawness, maybe. So
Oh.
we booked our resort, which was at Karmajiri. And Karmajiri and Jamtara are like the two upcoming places for stay because it's firstly less inhabited, so it's more in the core wilderness. Okay, so there's one interesting fact that we need to highlight that in other national parks in India, while you're booking the entry permits from the forest division, there are
Right.
certain specification of zones that you can visit, and accordingly, it's wise to enter from that gate because that gate will take you to that zone. Like in Kana, for example, it's divided into 4 zones, and your permit only restricts you to
Go to certain places
go to
in the
those
forest.
places in that zone.
Thankfully, Pench does not have a rule like that yet.
Okay.
Oh wow.
You can
Okay.
enter from any gate and move towards any side of the tourist route. So obviously the
Oh, okay.
tourism route only covers 20% of the core area. So
Right.
we entered from Karmajiri because we were traveling with Pagdandi Safaris, which is a known name in the space. They have multiple
Sure.
resorts across all these national parks and they have some of the best trackers as well.
Naturalists with them.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. No, you could even just talk about with respect to the booking also. What does one go ahead and initiate the booking and the entire process? It was just a question around that. So yeah, you can talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so for the forest tickets, for the safari tickets, one has to go to the mpforestonline.gov.in is the website that the Madhya Pradesh Forest Division have, and you can check for the availability of safari seats either for the whole vehicle, wherein you can be a bunch of four or even solo or a couple reserving a whole vehicle for yourself,
Right.
or a single seat, which is like a shareable basis.
So to book any of the safaris, the government website is the most advisable to go to because there are other
Okay.
ways of booking safaris, and you can always book safaris through the resort or the hotel that you are staying with. They will provide you the similar options with different rates and things like that. But there's a capped rate which depends on the particular forest.
Okay, I think that's great to know. That's some good information in things about how to get to Pench. And yeah, for those of you wondering what the name of the national park signifies as well, I think there's a
Yeah, I was
river,
wondering that.
river Pench that passes through
Yeah,
the
so
national park, right?
sorry
Yeah,
I
no
missed that
problem.
out while introducing the park. So there's this river, Pench River, that flows through the park and divides the core zone into two
Okay.
Right.
equal halves. How
Yeah,
interesting is
yeah.
that? So it's named after the Pench River, and that's why we call it the Pench National Park. So the fun fact about all national parks is how life thrives around the water
True.
sources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'll reflect back upon something Chandreyi mentioned, that summers are the other best time to visit a national park, and it's because every animal is coming down to the water hole some point of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And
True.
to get those amazing shots of a tiger dipped in water and the reflection, oh, that's something that
Yeah.
every wildlife photographer chases. So yes,
Seriously.
that's something that draws us to the jungles during summers again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. And yeah, tell us a little bit more now about your trip, right? Like, how long was this for, and what did you have planned as a part of this? Like, how many safaris were you looking at? Were there other experiences beyond the safaris that you were also looking forward to, etc.? Let's jump into those details now.
So coming to our trip, this was part of a long trip that we were taking to explore the jungles of central India. So we came down from the Satpura ranges and stayed with Pench Tree Lodge for 3 nights, which included safaris every morning and every afternoon. Because we have someone who has got new lenses because he just wants to spot tigers.
I wonder who that is. But yeah, go on.
I mean, that's another enthusiasm. Once you spot the tiger and feel the aura of a tiger in the jungle, you're hooked. You're hooked for
Right.
life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll give a little throwback to something that we should all watch if you haven't. There's this BBC documentary by David Attenborough called Spy in the Jungle
Sure.
Yeah.
that covers Pench National Park, and it was a documentary with spy camps which were held by the domesticated elephants that patrol
used by
the
the trackers, yeah.
forest
Yeah.
division. They held those cameras on their tusks and trunks and tried to get intimate and personal with a tiger's life without really hindering or somebody being there to shoot it. So that documentary actually got us hooked to one of those cubs who is now a record holder for the most litter that any tiger in the wild holds. So she has given birth to her 8th litter just recently in 2016, if I'm not wrong. And she has a phenomenal record of being a mother. She's T15. That's how our forest division names the tigers. So like T1, T2, T3, so on. So she is T15, or commonly called collar wali. So the name has an interesting story again. So when she was collared way back in 2009-10, around that time, the forest government was actually tracking her whereabouts and trying to learn more from where the tigers are, because the Save the Tiger project was one of the pioneer that time. Right.
Yeah.
So people who were citing her, because she was spotted mostly around the Karmajiri Gate and that area, she came to know of as Collar Wali. But later, because of a phenomenal success of litters, the locals started calling her Mataram, because she is Mata, and her aura is like that. So again, so we were chasing her, yes. That's why Karmajiri Gate, because we got to know from our naturalist experts at Pagdandi that that's an area she frequents. And she had just given birth to her last litter in 2016. So
Just a small correction that her last litter was in 2018 because when we spotted the cubs, they were about to become subadults. Cubs are not counted in the tiger population until they become subadults. So they were 3 little baby tigers, and that's her latest litter, and we just hope they are safe and healthy, and we get to see them again.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like rightly Joy pointed out, right? A record of sorts as well, because usually it's about 6 to 7 at the max is the number of litters that are seen.
Like
But this
Machli
one is
was
the
the
8th litter.
previous
Yeah.
most famous in terms of that. Yeah.
Exactly. So that way, I think we are blessed to have Collar Valley, and I think it's also actually accolades to the people at Pench National Park, right,
Yeah.
for
Absolutely,
making these
absolutely.
conditions feasible for tigers to breed safely. So I think that's
Yes.
an important thing to be called out. But yeah, how was your experience tracking Collar Valley?
So coming back to the story of Collarwali and tracking her, so we had spent almost what 90% of our first safari, like 4 hours, and we had spotted nothing. So and Chandreyi was pretty disappointed. She was like, okay, but
And
she was
when I
like, okay.
when he says nothing, we actually mean nothing because we were coming from another national park, right? We spent a couple of nights in Satpura before this, and we chased a sloth bear there. Were unsuccessful in spotting it. So the first morning in Pench was disappointing, to be honest, because since the morning the jungle was awfully quiet. There were no birds. There was no chirping, and it was just very very quiet and unnaturally silent for any activity. So our naturalists were getting anxious also that what happened to the jungle, because they always take note of these small changes, and it probably means something to them because we did not understand what it meant.
Right.
But what it meant came out later is the fact that Mataram had made a kill the night before, and she was busy eating with her cubs.
Oh,
Actually, she
wow.
was leading her cubs to the kill. So while we were returning, so there's this place inside Pench where all the safari jeeps come together for breakfast. It's called Alikatta. It's like at the central, there's this nice highland space where the jeeps come together and you are served your breakfast. And we were returning from there, quite disappointed of not having spotted a tiger, as everyone is on a safari. And suddenly the jungle rose with calls from everywhere. And for anybody who has been on a safari, you know how thrilling that gets. I mean, you
I know.
pause immediately because you want to track which side the calls are coming from.
And since you are paying so much attention to all these small sounds and sights and changes in the environment, right? A little call somewhere far away is still calls for the naturalist to stop the jeep and just try and hear more, right?
Right.
But in this case, like when he said the jungle road, it was like a frantic call of deers from all around us, and we were like, are we in the middle of something?
So
Think,
thankfully,
yeah.
we were going towards the Karmagiri gate, which is the less frequented gate. So there was only 3 jeeps, and they were like equally dispersed, I would say, around 200 meters apart. So we are like spaced out. We are waiting. We are listening to the calls, all 3 of us. The jeep right in front says that he might have spotted the tail going in the thickets or something like that because
And
it happened
you
fast.
you never tend to pay attention to that, right?
Attention,
But
yeah.
someone always says that.
So what actually had happened was the jeep in front had seen one of the cubs enter the other side of the jungle, and the calls were happening from either side of the jungle. Like both sides of the road was erupting with the deers
And
and
the
the
deers, we
monkeys
could
chirping.
clearly see they were so confused because they were looking in 2 different directions. So we realized that there might be one cub which has passed over to the other side, which is causing the deers on our right to scream and go berserk. But the deers on our left are screaming because there's a whole bunch of other tigers that side.
Oh, God.
But yeah, a lot of action seems to be happening. Was this like the sighting? Like, did you guys make the sighting at that point?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Yeah, so we waited, and after a while, the mother actually appears, and she has
Oh.
her own aura. So I cannot justify by just like mentioning or talking about it. You have to go watch my video that's coming out soon on YouTube. So
Yes,
to just feel that thrill of when she walked through the
And this lady has grace, let me tell you. So she let one of her cubs cross over, and she let the other 2. So it usually happens that they are protective about one particular cub, which is the weakest of the litter. So she tends to protect this little one, which is probably a female, and the other one is just getting into a little bit of confidence, right? So Kolavali comes and she sees the jeeps there are three jeeps, right? And we are like, okay, let's give her some space. Maybe she would cross from here. Maybe she would cross from there, right?
Huh.
We are doing all of this. The drivers are screaming at each other.
Huh.
But she, being herself and the
Huh.
dominant female of the queen of the forest, she chooses the narrowest wedge between the jeeps and she says,
Oh,
"This is my territory. You better back off." And she
are you
walks right
serious?
past.
She walks
Oh my
past,
God.
she crosses over, she looks back at the jeeps, and then she walks away. So
Oh,
it's like a clear message that I know you guys are here. You know I am here. This is my
yeah.
territory. I saw you. Good for you,
Yeah.
but I am going with my
Doing what I
cards.
will. Yeah.
So yeah, you better watch yourself.
Oh my God. Yeah.
She was really close. Okay, I lost all sense of what do you call it, composure. All my videos went off focus. So we figured that since she is with the cubs in that area, which probably means that there are more chances of seeing them later, right? So we went back with a happy heart that
In the
yes, a
afternoon,
very
yeah.
successful morning trip. We will go back in the
So we did
afternoon.
not see the cubs in the morning. We just saw her, the mother, Collarwali, cross through. We waited for a while, but then, as we said, we were almost at the edge of 11 o'clock to exit. And so we
Yeah.
had to exit because, yes, these rules are stringent. You have to exit on times
Or
and
you have to
all
pay a
national
fine.
parks. Yeah. So,
No.
Yeah.
but that got us kicked. Like we grabbed our lunch quickly and we were like, okay, let's go again. Maybe we'll spot them again.
Yeah.
But so as happens with most of us, we heard alarm calls at the same place, but
Huh?
spotted nothing.
But that is
Oh.
totally all right because, like I said, Pench currently has a lot of movement and a lot of tigers.
Right.
So we went to this another spot called Junewani within the forest, which is a little up the road. Like you have
It's
to
another
get
water
into a,
hole.
yeah, it's a
Okay.
water hole. And we spotted another famous tigress that who roams in Pench at this moment.
Okay.
Her name is a little funny. It's called Langri because she kind of limps on one leg.
She walks with a
Oh, okay.
twitch, one of her foot.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So
she
yeah.
is one massive tigress, and she was in no mood to give anyone any shots that day. She was sleeping far away in between some trees beside the water. So we spent the afternoon watching a tiger sleep in peace.
I mean, imagine spending an evening by a nice lake, which is a water hole, with a tiger on
Yeah.
the other bank.
And I think more than the obviously a tiger is a fascinating thing, right? But
Yeah.
it's about the animal behaviors that you notice, which makes it so much more fun. So for me, it was very cute because it felt like just another house cat, which is like taking an afternoon nap, right? Like doing like,
Aw.
sometimes just waking up, raising the ears, and like just feeling what is happening and just going back to sleep again. So we
Yeah.
kept doing that for a couple of hours, just observing her because very honestly, it is a lovely thing to do. It's you don't have to talk to anyone. You just can be with your own thoughts and what's in front of you, be it nature, be it a tigress somewhere in the bushes. But it's all about the setting that kind of, like I said before, fills your soul. So that
Yeah.
afternoon safari was one of those.
Yeah, definitely. And like I think even you called out at the beginning, right? Especially Pench thankfully, with the tiger density now pretty good, there is this high chance of spotting it. But I think more than just the spotting, it's also about the process of tracking and then finally getting that money shot, right? The
Yeah.
actual
Yeah.
shot of the tiger and then observing the patterns. That's interesting. Yeah. Mhm.
More interestingly, they have such nice stories. Like once you
Yeah.
start getting a little conversational with your naturalist or the
Sure.
guide, they actually, the people who actually observe these big cats in the jungle day in, day out, you get to know of their stories, and that builds up the character that I was talking about. And you get to know the area they are in and how that character kind of takes care of the actions. It justifies the actions they are doing. And that is a story, a tell to tale when you are in front of it. You're confronting that animals in their habitat. So it's inspiring.
Definitely, and yeah, like you said, it's a lot about the backstories. That's why having good naturalists also kind of,
Yes.
Adds to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the icing on the cake, right? Because otherwise, you're watching them, you obviously have the excitement and the joy of the sighting, but once you know a little bit about the backstory,
Yeah, it
like,
lets you connect in a different
like
aspect.
adds a name to it. Like even for example, Kalarwali, right?
Yeah.
Kalarwali, like we were mentioning at the beginning, she was featured in that BBC documentary, and it was Badi Mada and
And
Charger,
Charger,
who
yes,
were the parents, right? So
Charger.
yes.
yeah, so all of them have those little stories, and you actually see them.
Charger again had this attitude of charging. So you see
Yeah.
again,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah,
the
the
famous
characteristic
Charger.
kind of comes through.
The charger has a chota charger now in the jungle.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
Yes.
really?
That's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that's what makes it fun. And like I was getting to earlier, that having a great naturalist, a great guide, actually guide you through this whole process. That's where the fun lies. Otherwise, you're watching and you're probably absorbing a bit of it, but to kind of get the most out of it, having a good naturalist, a great naturalist, helps that much more. Now, the morning and the evening safaris, obviously, you've done both of these, both of them different in their own rights, and you had the good fortune of kind of getting sightings in both these. But also tell us a little bit about the time you spent at the tree lodge, and how was spending a night at the jungle, because that's a different animal in itself, right? Spending a night there with all the calls, because it's pretty much I don't know about how it was. I'm hoping it was. It's silent. It's not marred by any kind of say human-made noises as much. Just listening to the calls of the jungle, right? That's it just gives you a eerie feeling about what's going on until you're able to sleep. I think just observing those noises, it's a different
Yes, so
experience.
it was quite fascinating because firstly we got a little lost while looking for our lodge. So we were heading from Nagpur. We took a train to Nagpur station. We took a car from there, and we were driving to Pench Tree Lodge. This lodge is in the buffer zone. It sits in the middle of the forest with like 6 tree lodges and 12 cottages.
So the Pench Tree Lodge is spread across around 40 acres of land, and it's huge because it's a mini forest in itself. It's a masterpiece by architect Dean D. Cruz, and there are two kinds of cottages that you get. One which are tree houses. Oh wow, that's awesome, right? And
Yeah.
and the other one which are more contemporary and which you can say like hamlets with attic, something on those sorts.
Or like a jungle chalet, if
Yeah.
you can imagine that.
Yeah. So, but the experience in this premise is really amazing. Why? Because of the sounds that you mentioned. I mean, it is so thrilling at night to walk across 43 acres on the buffer zone of a national park at night.
It's a beautiful walk. There are crickets chirping all around you. There's very little minimal lights, which are also lanterns, so you don't feel like you are in the middle of nowhere, basically.
Yeah.
And the experience was amazing. Staying in those tree houses, it's another surreal experience.
Definitely, and yeah, you're in the land of Mowgli. You cannot perhaps sleep on a tree like I'm wondering Mowgli did, but the closest you can get to is getting on a
tree
tree
lodge,
lodge,
yes.
right? And I mean, jokes apart, it also becomes like so critical and so important, right? Finding the right balance, because on one point you are in the jungle, right? You are in the home of the tiger and of the other animals, so you have to find the right balance where you can I'm not saying coexist, but whenever you're visiting them, you kind of don't go on and ruin the ecosystem, don't ruin the atmosphere and the environment in these natural spaces. So brilliant. I think you've had a wholesome experience with Pagdandi. Now, you kind of shared your experience of the tracking and the sighting on the first day, but any more eventful encounters with the big cats, or just with the other inhabitants of the jungle?
Yes, of course. So we didn't come to the next day story. Pinch that way was really rewarding for us. I mean, we were really, really lucky. I mean, be it for Pagdandi safaris or the whole experience, we were
Or
really
just
lucky.
the mood of the animals of the jungle
Yes.
that day.
So while we did not spot the cubs on day one, day two morning started with a bang for us.
And it was a completely unexpected, very, very pleasant surprise. But to be very honest with you guys, there is a little concern attached to this that I will come to later. But
Okay.
the sighting itself started about 500 meters after entering the jungle.
So our trackers, very interestingly spotted one half pug mark, which was, so basically there was this patch of grass and there was half the pug mark on the pathway. And we realized that, okay, there is a big cat walking. It most likely will be the cubs. And because we saw the mother cross the day before. Right.
Yeah.
So and after a while, like 50 meters in more, we spot
So
them.
basically what happens is you kind of tend to make a strategy as you move forward into the jungle, right? Like the strategizing starts when you hear the first call, see the first pug mark, and reach the first crossroad to decide whether to go right or to left, right? But all of this happened before any of this could happen. So we are on our way and we spotted this half pug mark, and there are two jeeps, the Taj jeep and the Pagdandi jeep. So there are just two jeeps that morning from Karmajiri, which was, I don't know, God sent maybe. And we are going very slowly just to get a feel. And this is very early in the morning. This is like 6:30. There is a little fogginess, a little sunlight coming from here and there. And suddenly we see that the jeep in front has stopped on the road.
Okay.
And automatically you look towards where everyone in that jeep is looking. And I see this tail in the jungle. Like, and right beside us, this is like 20-30 meters from us. And I see that tail and I am like, there. And our jeep stops. And okay.
So we observe that where it is. So Pench again has a thick covering of lantana, as you call it, which are creepers and thickets that kind of
It's like 1.5
provide a cover.
feet from the ground that is covered in like small bushy plants.
Okay.
And that stops you from seeing clearly through the thickets. And that is used by these predators, like leopards mostly, and tigers sometimes, to hide themselves while hunting or to avoid each other, territorial fights, and so on.
And
and
it
so forth.
works best for the cubs, right? So we realize that we have 3 cubs on our left, and they are alone. The mother is not around because they see.
So that's a story. I'll tell you that story. So, like again, once you start knowing the characteristics, you start putting pieces of the puzzle together, and what story that reveals is awesome. So let's come there. So, so we spot these 3. One of them was actually trying to practice stalking because it was early wee hours, and we had him literally stalk a fawn, a baby chital fawn, for a while, unsuccessfully though, while the other 2 were learning from their big brother. And suddenly, after a while, when the initial attempt of hunt was spoiled, they realized, okay, it's getting hotter, let's move.
And that's the difference with cubs and fully grown tigers, right? Because these cubs are in their play zone at that moment. They are being stalked by a couple of jeeps, but they have already grown a little comfort level with having humans around in jeeps. So by the virtue of Conravalli being their mother or otherwise, so they seemed pretty comfortable because they were just behind the first thicket, so they were at a safe distance from all the people. And they are just stalking, playing among themselves, not in the mood to go anywhere immediately, which is a golden opportunity for everyone. So it was first the 2 jeeps, and word spread super fast in the jungles.
And soon there were everybody. So we had a good 40-45 minutes of being at peace with these 3 cubs playing around. Before the other gates, the jeeps from other gates started by coming
Making
in,
their way in,
making their way, and soon there was this huge traffic.
So imagine like a kilometer-long straight road stretch that ends into a crossroad, and the crossroad takes you either right or left, and that entire 500-meter stretch is full of jeeps. Everyone has lined up. So we move ahead.
So we decided let's ease it a little. We have seen them peacefully. Let's not crowd here. Let's move on.
Give the others a little chance.
So we take we go to the crossroad and take a left and move a little ahead, and suddenly
there's a huge roar.
Huge. The jungle echoes with the roar of a male tiger, and our naturalist.
Like only if I could growl it. It was like.
The talent speaks. The naturalist can tell that it's a male tiger or a female tiger because they are hearing them day in, day out. So
Right.
our naturalists, even though they heard it, they got really concerned and we're like, so what happened? And they're
And
like,
they were not excited. Okay, we are like, oh, there is another tiger in the jungle. Let's go chase it.
but
And
they are
they didn't
concerned.
seem very excited about the prospect. So we asked what is wrong. And then they say that so there has not been a male in this region because when a mother tiger with cubs inhabit a space, they make sure that there are no
Males
strange
apart from the
males
father
around the
of those cubs.
area.
Oh, okay.
And the father of the cub was spotted in a completely different area. So these naturalists share information and the guides share information. So they know how to track these animals. So
Yeah.
they immediately said, but the father of the cubs are in a completely different area. So this has to be another male. So the cubs are in danger.
Because they are all in the same quadrant of the jungle, if you can imagine that.
Right.
So since that is exactly why we mentioned that long straight road and taking a left, because in that left side quadrant there are three little cubs and there is a strange male.
Oh God.
Who's roaring away. So
God.
And the mother is not around at the
the
moment.
mother is
Is
not
not
around
yet
at the
around.
moment.
Oh
So
God. Okay.
we are like, okay, we have to go check. So we waited for this male to come out. We were too hasty, it seems, because another jeep after us spotted it. So, like somebody else after us said that he spotted the male, but we had to come back to ensure did the cubs actually cross to the other quadrant because there was this huge pile of traffic and the cubs were getting confused.
And this is where the concerning part comes, right? Because we came back to see what the situation is, and we saw uh, the cubs are very close to all the jeeps, and they're just looking a bit restless. They're pacing a little bit, going in circles. So we figured that basically the eldest cub, which was trying to teach the others how to pray and stalk and things like that, right? That one is looking for a way out in between all these jeeps. And while they are comfortable seeing maybe 2, 3, 5 jeeps, here there were at least 35 jeeps.
With
Oh
the
God.
camper, the big camper that enters from the government and all of that, everybody, because it was okay in terms of tourism and sighting. Yes, you are getting bumper sightings of three cubs in front of you. So I mean, it's one versus the other, the flip side.
It's just that we knew that they have been around for 1.5 hours.
And they are trying to cross
They're
because
trying to cross. There is another strange male, and the fact that so there other news came in that Collarwali was spotted in the right hand side
Another
of the
direction.
forest. So she was a little far away,
Away.
but she was there.
Right.
Somebody else had spotted her a little far away, so it became clear that the cubs were trying to get to the mother on the other side of the forest and get away from this whoever this strange new male is.
yeah.
Right.
So the interesting thing and how it unfolded is another insight into how smart tigers are. So eventually, after waiting for a while, this eldest cub figured out, okay, they had some, I believe they communicated to each other in some language, some
They
form.
came out, they did a
They
little
came
bit
out.
of,
They did
I
a
don't know,
recce.
look around.
It's almost
recce.
like a recce. And the eldest two of them, they started walking in completely opposite directions toward the edge, like either edge.
Yeah, and the jeep started
Parallelly. And
going
so the jeep
crazy.
started straying. They had to make a choice whether to choose
This
tiger
or
A
that.
or tiger B. And
Right.
slowly and steadily, a big enough gap opened up in the middle.
And the
And the
smallest one
smallest
passed.
one just passed.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
And after
my
that, when
God.
all of this is done, these two tigers take their own time and they are like, we are big enough, we can handle
They
ourselves.
sit down, they lick their paws, show
And then
off
they
that
cross over.
you can't stop us. And then they take their time and they walk and they pace and eventually they move like inside
The
the
other side.
forest. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It was I don't know, like it was a very, very, very unique experience. I almost was in tears looking at the tigers, but that's when that little Chotu one crossed, and it felt like a success of my own. That
It's
yay,
like
they
we are
crossed.
all praying for something and that actually worked because the animals could figure out what they had to do. So it's like a win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think beyond anything, like I also called out at the beginning, right? Remember that you are in their home, you are in their space, right? So behave like guests, be like good guests, I guess. Don't don't create a ruckus, and let them be in their space. Don't take away. I mean, just don't make it difficult for them. So keep that in mind and be responsible, like Chandreyi and Joy have called out. It's great though. It's great though that you've kind of had a chance to see some of these. Behaviors in these little cubs as well, right? The process of learning.
Yeah.
Which gives us a lot of hope.
Exactly. Yeah. They're just in the process of learning how to stalk on prey, etc. And actually, David Attenborough's documentary as well. That also kind of reminds me. It had really nicely captured the different phases that the cubs go through and how they're dependent on the mom. Right at the beginning, just watching them through the phases of lives. It is a really heartening process in its entirety. This is day 2, right? And you said you spent what, 3 days, 3 nights?
Yeah, so we had another safari, and then we skipped the third.
The third
so
morning we wanted to rest a bit because
spend
getting up
time at
every
the
day at
resort
5
itself,
o'clock was
yeah.
getting a little, and it was cold. It was February. It was super cold in the mornings. Although the safari guys make sure that you're comfortable, they give you a hot pack, they give you a blanket. They have beautiful breakfast with them, which is served during about the middle of the safaris. I think we have covered most of the things that we did. Few small things that everyone should remember and think about when they are in the jungles, which is the color of your dress. What
Don't
are you
wear
wearing to a
flashy
safari?
colours.
Don't wear flashy colors. Try to mix into the environment. Try wearing dark greens, dark khaki. Those colors work beautifully.
Yeah.
Carry odomos or things like that if you are
Mosquito
prone to
repellents,
mosquitoes
yeah.
and other insects. It will keep them away. The interest levels when you are going on a safari also depends a lot on basically how you perceive wildlife, right? So one thing that Joydeep keeps saying is before becoming a wildlife photographer, you have to become a wildlife lover and naturalist.
True.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's so much to see, and you just have, if you have that one perception of just spotting a tiger, like while we were hearing the tiger growl and we were waiting for this male tiger, we saw 2 beautiful pigeons,
Green-tailed.
green-tailed yellow pigeons.
Wow.
So
They were making a home.
They were making
It
a
was
home.
so
It was a
sweet.
couple who were making a home. This
And
worth.
it's an effort worth watching. Okay, it's a life lesson. The lady has basically chosen the leaves which will be tied together to make a home for them. So she's perching on that particular branch and waiting for the gentleman to go and pick up little twigs, and he brings it back to her and she starts making her
Sewing them
nest
together,
around it.
yeah.
It's beautiful to just like we sat there waiting for this male tiger to come out, right? But all this while we were busy watching like how much progress they made because they are quite fast.
Yeah.
And there are such sights all across, like just to see a bark and then realize, oh, there are 2 owls there, but so perfectly camouflaged. So such sights are across. So even if you don't get a sighting, it's just to be there. It's phenomenal in itself.
True. True. And even talking about Pench does have a lot of other endangered species, right? That one can look around with respect to, I mean, tiger, of course, being the highlight. There is even the sloth bear.
The sloth
Yeah.
bear, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the sloth bear, and then even Indian wolf. It almost looks like a dog, but apparently it's one of the rare species
So
that is
again,
there.
for the Indian wolf, it's said that the buffer zone of Khawasa and that Kursapur area is really good for spotting wolves and the pack of wolves. Like lately, they have been spotted there. So these areas again have different kind of drives that one can connect with their hospitality owners, like the places they are staying, and figure out, because there are bushwalks, there are night safaris and things that are organized on the buffer zones to increase awareness, to increase and give an experience of the thrill. I mean, a night drive is a completely different ball game, even though it's the buffer zone, because you never know what you're gonna spot.
Yeah,
But
true.
and a bushwalk is really informative. You get to see lavender, which are like wild lavender across, and those are the plants you will never notice otherwise. Yeah.
Right,
I
true,
know.
true.
I think
And even I think the flora and fauna, I mean the flowers, there are so many wildflowers also is what I've heard, but yeah, okay. And basically it has a lot to
I would
offer.
completely, I'm completely on board with what Joy is saying there, that it is just beyond the big cat, right? Obviously, they are the kind of the soul of the jungle, right? And especially in this case, you were lucky enough to spot the queen of the jungle, but it is so much more beyond that. So thank you so much for kind of narrating these stories around the land of Mowgli and Sher Khan and the land of the jungle book, right? Throwing some limelight on Kaulat Wali, who's the queen of this jungle. Thank you so much, Chandreyi and Joy,
Thank you,
for
guys.
indulging us in this beautiful, beautiful conversation.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for giving us the chance to talk about this in the way we wanted to, because a lot of times the main attraction is the tiger, like you said, and all these small other things that goes into making these experiences fuller and richer in what they are. Just to mention a small thing, there is an organization called TOFT. TOFT is basically an organization where all the companies that we are talking about who runs safaris in these jungles, it's about think of a Taj safari, think of Pagdandi, think of any name that comes to your mind when you think of Central Indian jungles. They all come together, they have a program. They nurture naturalists from around these regions who are familiar with the geography and topography and the flora and fauna of the places. So it's all about this coordinated effort along with the government's efforts for the last, I think, 20-30 years in making these places more protected. And it is not easy to rehabilitate human beings out of these buffer zones into safer areas, because there is always chance of conflict. And since Faiza mentioned flowers, right? So mahua is one of the most cherished, most sought after flower in these jungles. And mahua has also taken many lives.
Both by humans and by sloth bears. So that is the reason of conflict for human sloth bear conflict, because both chase the mahua flower.
And obviously, when humans kind of crouch down, they also become
anything like a
subject for
four-legged animal.
attacks by predators. So these sort of conflicts have existed in these areas, and it's because of a growing tourism that they are finding different livelihoods. So I think it's really critical to look at these historical lands, because these jungles are thousands of years old, and they have always been home to animals which are getting smaller and smaller. Their spaces are getting more and more constricted as development happens across the world. But it's the efforts of these tourism operators, the locals, and the tourists and the travelers who visit to make sure that the balance exists. And that is what we wanted to talk about. And we can't thank you enough for having us tell our Musafir story on your podcast. It was great talking to you about everything that we did in Pench, and it would be lovely to visit with you someday, for sure.
We
Thank you, guys.
certainly hope so, and we certainly hope to cross paths sometime soon. But the pleasure has completely been ours to have you on the platform, and it's our pleasure that you could share your stories, your Musafir stories, and
and such an interesting story.
Exactly, share these beautiful moments from your trip to, like I said, land of Mowgli and Sher Khan. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Saif and Faiza. Thanks for this lovely chat and lovely session.
Cheers to Musafir stories.
Yeah.
That was yet another great episode of the Musafir Stories. If you guys like the show, please subscribe to us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Savan, Pocket Casts, Castbox, Stitcher, or any other podcasting app available on iOS or Android. Please do leave us a review on iTunes. It goes a long way in the show's discoverability. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We go by the handle The Musafir Stories. Or, if it suits you, you could email us at themusafirstories@gmail.com or visit our website at www.themusafirstories.com for more information. All of these links will be made available in the show notes section of each episode. So here's to more traveling, sharing, and inspiring. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, happy travels and goodbye.